Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another video from the Canal Sidings Model Railway channel. And I'm pleased to say that I am pretty much at the end of building my 3D Backscene, and it has been a labour of love. I'm not sure I'd ever do it again, but I think that the result is worthwhile. As you can see, if I pan the camera, you can see that I've pretty much done it all the way down to the end there where the window is, and that's about 11 feet, so it's quite a long back scene to have made in pieces like I have. Now, I did whiz through last time when I did the video because I wasn't really in a position to do a video. I just did it because I wanted you to know that I was still around and wasn't going to be 6 weeks between videos again. So what I thought I'd do this time was what I omitted last time, which was to tell you what all the parts of it are and where to get them. I did mention the back scenes were from Gauge Master. They are their industrial back scenes. They're not bad, but they're cheap, so you know, you pay your money and takes your choice. You could use ID back scenes, which are much more expensive, but ID didn't have what I needed, and I had this Gauge Master in stock, as I've said. So that's why I use that. But what I'm hoping is that that is now just something that enhances what you see in front, which is the 3D part, where I've used low relief buildings and other accessories to actually make up a scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to each section and run through it, and this time I'll actually say what the component parts of it are, where you can buy them, for instance, who makes them. So I'll just zoom you in so you can see a couple of buildings, and then we'll gradually move along, and I'll just move the camera along so that you get a better angle to view from each time, rather than by the time you get to the end, as you saw there, viewing it from a very strange angle. So we'll start at this end, which is the end I started at. Just a little bit of background as to what I've tried to achieve here. The intention is that this is the extreme edge of a very big industrial area, which the back scene is meant to depict behind it. And on the bit down by the window, that's a very old bit of this part of the industrial area, and hence the buildings are older. And as we get towards this end, the buildings are much more up to date. Bear in mind we're in the 1990s, early 2000s here. So air conditioning was coming in, but not everybody had got it. CCTV cameras were around, but again, not everybody had them. They weren't as all encompassing as they are now. And in general, things were starting to get a little bit more difficult for people to trespass on the railway, etc. Security fences were getting higher and more difficult to scale, and all those things that go with it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with the modern end, which is here, and I'm just going to zoom the camera in a little on those two buildings at the end. Okay, now this is the bit you saw last time and that I talked about quite extensively, and so I'm just picking up a couple of bits of crib sheet here. And what we have here are these very low relief buildings that I've built. Now most of this whole back scene has come from only about half a dozen manufacturers, that's all. And most of the buildings actually come from scalemodelScenery.co.uk, which is Justin and Tina Noble's organisation, and they've got some great stuff, I have to say, and you'll hear that name and modelrailwayscenery.com, which is actually where the download and print kits come from. I download them, print them, stick them on card, etc. You can buy a lot of these from Scale Model Scenery already printed for you and cut, but I prefer to download and print because a lot of these buildings haven't been built in the way that they were originally designed. Excuse me. The first four in fact that you were looking at just now have all been built pretty much exactly as they were designed by Justin Noble. But as we go along, then I have taken a lot more liberties. So we're talking about the buildings first. The first building that you can see is the Model Railway Scenery low relief office block, and I'll just put that there so that you can see that that's what we're talking about. Try and get the light to shine on that properly. If I could, sorry about this, if I could get that piece of paper not to bend, you would get even light on it. There we go. That is the first building, and it's built pretty much as that, except that I've left the pavement off the bottom. These don't seem to have any type numbers. You just go to modelrailwayscenery.com and look up low relief office block, and that's what you'll get. It's a modern one. Okay, the building next to it is the low relief industrial unit sidewall number 2, which is that one. And as you can see, I have built it almost exactly as that is specified. I just changed the name, that was all, of the building. You will find there's a bit of mix and match with buildings and signs, so I'm not going to mention that I've changed the names, etc. But again, that building is built exactly as Justin designed it. I haven't modified it at all. In front of those buildings is this fence that I've mentioned, which is the security fence, which belongs to the railway. Property on this side belongs to the railway, and on that side belongs to the industrial estate. That fencing, and I hope it doesn't shine too much off of this, is that one, which is from modelrailwayscenery.com, and it is their 2 metre palisade security fencing, number LX055-00. I've got 3 packs of that in order to get along my 11 feet, and one of the reasons I haven't quite finished the back scene is because I still need to build one more section of it, and that requires building it, and it requires spraying it with nasty paints, so I need to get my spray booth out to do that. And I like to have other things to spray when I do that, so I'm getting a few more bits and pieces together to spray as well. Okay, a couple of extras that I've put in here, a couple of bits of detail, which I mentioned before. Up there, behind the fence, there is a pallet, just standing against the wall, and that comes from this Scale Model Railway Scenery kit, which is 4-foot pallets, LX022-00. Not that easy to put together. Well, no, let me rephrase that. Easy to put together, but you do need rocket card glue and the micro applicator, because they are tiny. But they're relatively easy to put together. If I can do it, they must be pretty easy. Also in here, I mentioned that we have a ladder there, and that comes from the Scale Model Scenery.co.uk wooden ladders kit, LX108-00. That you get a total of 27 assorted ladders there. I've used that one there and one more further down. The next thing that I have to point out that's added detail is the TV camera, which I did point out last time. There's one up there and there's one a bit further down as well. And they come from Scale Model Scenery. And they are 3D printed. All the other things were laser cut, by the way. These are 3D printed, and these are AX071-00, and you get a pack of 4 cameras with brackets. So that's the detailed parts that we've got there. The only other thing is how I've actually put these onto the back scene, and in between the buildings here and here, well, you can't see that. Can you see that bit? No, you can't. Let me just turn you around a tiny bit there, because I've just pointed to something you can't see. Here is a gap between the buildings to let people through, because there are doors, as you can see on the back of some of the buildings. There's another one there, and they would probably be one of the fire exits from the building. So if you get out of the building, you've got to be able to get round the front to the assembly point or whatever. And these gaps are required for that. And what I've tried to depict is a road, which is really hard to see because it's so close to the bottom. A road and a terrace of houses that runs all the way along behind this. So you'll see that repeated in 3 or 4 more places as we go down. You'll see the terraced houses and possibly you'll see the road, although it isn't that easy to see. Okay, the other thing that is used a lot throughout this back scene is scenic scatter materials and scenic and other scenic type materials. Just going to have to pan you back a tiny bit again. I once last week pointed out this. Here there is a bush growing up behind the fence, and there is all sorts of scatter material along here with little bushes growing up against the walls and things like that, where they would just grow if they're not, if there's no janitor keeping on top of it. And all of this is from Woodland Scenics. There's virtually nothing that isn't Woodland Scenics. And what I've used is, for instance, that bush at the end isn't really a bush. It comes from their underbrush product, which is just small pieces of very, very flexible material. I don't know what it is. And it's sort of a foamy stuff, but it's very airy-fairy and looks very much like it's got leaves and things like that. It looks like plants, but I don't think it is. And that's underbrush, and I've used that along the layout in a couple of colours, probably light green and medium green. The floor along here, the ground cover all the way along, in this bit and beyond, is meant to depict a sort of a gravelly type area, which is easy to walk on and easy to keep clean, but that has a few weeds growing in it. It's been well looked after because these are new buildings, so people have tended to look after them, and the idea is that that's what it needs to depict, but at the same time there are other things that are growing in it that aren't always cleared straight away. A bit later on you'll see one that is completely clear, and obviously somebody really looks after it, and it's just close cropped grass, but we'll see that later. I've tried to make the backs, the ground cover at the back variable as we go along, and you'll see there is quite a variation. Okay, so that's the first bit. There is one other thing. These air conditioning units, there are 2 on here, and you'll see a few more at this end of the layout. They disappear once we go further into the old section, but they actually did come with this kit, but you can buy them from Scale Model Scenery as a separate kit, but I used the ones that came with the kit. I have got some of the ones and I've used them elsewhere, but these are definitely the ones that came in the kit. So what I'll do now is I'll just move the camera around to the next couple of buildings. I'm trying to move it slowly. So here we have the next two buildings. This one is that building from scalemodelScenery.co.uk, and that is the low relief industrial unit sidewall, and I think they call it number 1, but that's not mentioned on here because they obviously hadn't got a number 2, so it's not mentioned as a number 1, but that kit is built exactly as supplied, except that I've added an air conditioning unit. I don't know that there was one. There was some supplied, but I don't think that they were shown on the picture. And I've also got another CCTV camera here, so that we are looking at the modern end of the scene. Again, these people keep their area here quite clean, and there are no bushes or weeds growing up. I've got a bug in here flying around my face. There are no weeds or bushes growing up in front of that building at all, and again, it's obviously well tended and looked after. The next building is very different. It's it's a slightly older building, and it comes from scalemodelScenery.com again, scalemodelScenery.co.uk. This time it is the low relief industrial unit end wall, and again I've built it pretty much exactly as the picture on the front, even to where excuse me, even to where the air conditioning units are, and the fact that it's got downpipes. But behind the fence is now quite different. We have a much less well tended area, and we have a lot of much taller plants growing up, and even here, which you probably can't see, but if you look really carefully just there at the bottom of this downpipe, there's even a fern growing there. And that fern is one of the laser cut minis kits from Knock, and it is number 14138, and it's the laser cut minis ferns. They're not that easy to put together because they're made of a strange material that in order to stick it together you have to use super glue. It's a sort of a paper, but it doesn't stick very well. I couldn't get card glue to stick it, but then there's hardly any surface to stick. But I did manage to put it together in the end, and I thought it just sort of gave a good starting point for the rubbish that's along here, that where it hasn't been tended for probably a couple of years. The first thing that we get after that, apart from some much taller ground cover grass. Now, what I used along this part and beyond was Woodland Scenic's fine turfs, with the occasional bit of coarse turf against walls and things. Here, along this one, it's all coarse turf, which gives you a much more unkempt grassy look. What I've got growing in it there, which you can see if you look carefully, is some cow parsley. And that was bought ready-made parts, which are really quite good. And they are from, I can't read it, hang on, because I'm not wearing my reading glasses. MP, that's Mother Papa, MP Scenery Products. Can't remember where I bought them from, a UK company, and what we're talking about here is a 32 pack of cow parsley. They say they're 1/2 inch high, I would say that's a really good 1/2 inch high. And that is 70055 is the reference. They're not cheap, but they are really good and very easy to use. You just pull them out of the pack and plant them into a little hole. So that's the next bit, and then we come along with some more, probably just, can't see it, let me have a look. Yeah, it's more coarse turf and possibly bits of underbrush. And then here we've got some much coarser materials, bits of underbrush here, but once we get to here, what we're using is Woodland Scenic's clump foliage, they call it. Supposed to be good for making trees, but it's also pretty good for making bushes. And again, I use all these different scatters and scenic materials. I use them in 2 or 3 colours. Ground cover in fine I use in about 6 different colours. I use soil, earth, etc., and earth blend, all sorts of colours, as well as greens and light greens, dark greens, etc. And you just mix them. I can't say any more than that. I just wing it, just throw them in and mix them together. Nothing else there that's any different. You can see the terraced houses through the gap here. So we'll move along a bit further. I'm going to move the camera now, so I'm going to stop the video and then come back to it. Oh dear. Okay, as you can see, I've moved the camera along a bit now, and we're still looking at one of the buildings we looked at just now, which is this one. But now we can see the next few. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn that and zoom in a little to that building there. We're talking about this building here, which is to let, and the sign wasn't taken off and it's fallen off. And as you can see, it has got a massive amount of growth along here now. Nobody cares about it. It is a real mess. The building comes from, would you believe, this kit by scalemodelsscenery.co.uk, and it is actually called Low Relief Industrial Unit Number 4, brick built with brown siding. But as you can see, that picture I just showed you has got 2 massive, great big, I think they're either windows or they are doors that open. I'm not sure. But I haven't built it with any windows. There is a door. If you look really carefully, you might be able to see that behind all this lot, down here somewhere, there is a door. But it's just become completely overgrown because it's been to let for a long time. Nobody's bothered to look after it, and nobody really cares about it. I haven't built it the same, but I've built it similar. You can definitely build that from this kit. There are all sorts of ways you can modify this kit. What I'm not sure is if I actually made it lower relief than the kit, because this is a very old kit from from Scale Model Scenery, or Model Railway Scenery, I beg your pardon. And they are the same company, by the way. They're just different trading points, different websites. I have built this very low relief. I think that the original isn't quite as low relief as that. But for me, low relief works well. The differences along here are that these plants now are mostly something called Woodland Scenic's fine leaf foliage. And I think pretty well all of the bits that are sticking above the fence are Woodland Scenic's fine leaf foliage. It is really good stuff because it looks like little bushes all of its own, little shrubs. It's got proper stems. It comes in a pack which it's all knotted together, and it's a hell of a job to separate some of the parts. And if you don't get it all separated, what you'll suddenly realise is that one of the bits in it is actually not part of it, it's another piece, and it actually appears to be growing upside down. And I've had all sorts of trouble. Oh, just knock something down. I've had all sorts of trouble separating it, but that's not a criticism. It's a good product, and it's Woodland Scenic's fine leaf foliage. I have a pack of it somewhere. Here we go. A lot of people may not have tried this because it is expensive. I think it's about 15 quid a pack nowadays. But that is what it is. This happens to be the light green version. And what it looks like in the pack. Oops, oh, sorry about that. I am such a clumsy sod, I've just kicked the camera. Right, I'm just trying to get this in the right place. What it looks like in the pack is that a lot of bits of tree. For instance, if I pick that up and get rid of my pointer out of my hand, I pick that piece up, you can see it actually looks like a bit of a tree. Whether that bit sticking out the side is part of it or not, I'm not absolutely sure. But I think it actually grows. I think it's a product a bit like seafoam or sea moss, whatever way you like to talk about it, where you can actually grow the plants. But what the fine leaf foliage is made of, I really don't know. But it's not a handmade thing like those cow parsleys are. It's something else, but it is very useful and produces very nice small bushes, but also medium-sized trees as well you can get out of the pack. And right at the end later on you will see a medium-sized tree in fine leaf foliage. I think that's in dark green. That was light green. The other pack I've got is medium green. But they are expensive, which is why I think a lot of people don't use them, because they're about 12 quid a pack, and there isn't much in a pack. But used in the right places, they can actually look really good. Okay, so that's that building. Now, if we just pan round a bit, the next building, I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit here, and perhaps a little more. Yes, there we go. I'd say that was about right. The next building, which is this one, is not a model railwayscenery.com building. It's not even made of card. It's not even a kit. It comes ready-made like that, and it comes from a company called 10 Commandments Models. I advise you go on the internet and look up 10 Commandments Models. Don't look up 10 Commandments, because you'll get all sorts of religious stuff thrown at you, but 10 Commandments Models will show you that. And this comes from their modern industrial range of buildings. And it's cast in plaster. They call it stone cast. It's quite heavy, and when it arrives it's white, and it's got a few warts and lumps on it that you have to take off. But it's a nice kit. It's a nice product. Once you've painted it up, I quite like them. And I thought I would like something large in the middle of the back scene, just to sort of give you a bit more of a focal point perhaps. And so this is the largest building I could find in low relief. When I say large, I don't just mean wide, but I mean tall as well. And I couldn't find anything any taller than that. And it sits nicely underneath the cooling towers of what presumably is a power station. My son calls it Great Barford. No, sorry, Little Barford. My son calls it Little Barford because we live not far from Little Barford power station, so, and we often pass it in the car. Anyway, so that was why I built one of these on here. Now this is the company that cares, and there is no weeds, no nothing in the whole of this. This is part of their yard here. And there are no weeds or anything along here. It's all clear and grass. So boring, if you like. They're obviously having a bit of work done because there's a ladder propped up here. That ladder comes from that same scale model scenery pack that I mentioned for the other ladder. And if you look really carefully, just down there in that corner, there's a dustbin. And that comes from this pack, which is Nightwing. I'll just turn it over, from a company called Nightwing, and it is their B2 OOHO line-side range dustbins, and they're white metal. And I did nothing more to that other than scrape off the moulding seams because they were quite visible, and simply gave it a black wash, just to tone it down a bit, and it looks like a slightly dirty galvanised dustbin. That's the only one I've used, but it's just something different in the rather boring area otherwise. Okay, now the Ten Commandments building, by the way, does not have a designation number. As I say, it's just a large building from their modern industrial range, and because it comes in white you have to paint it. I used Vallejo paint, and I painted it the way it's shown on their website because I thought that red roof set it off really nicely against the grey. I've made the grey dirtier than they've made it, but it's relief. If you listen, it's actually a proper corrugated building. It's not just flat. These shipping containers here, because this is a shipping company, these containers here, obviously this is not an intermodal depot. This is, my view is that yes, there are intermodal depots and there are ships that are full of containers and there are trains that are full of containers, but at some point a container goes onto a lorry and is delivered somewhere, and there probably are very few containers about where it's delivered. So this company have containers which they fill occasionally to ship, and then they get containers full of shipping stuff which they then distribute. So they empty the containers and distribute the contents. That's my idea. I might be completely wrong there, but these containers come from another download and print company, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, which is Scale Scenes. Scalescenes.com, which is a company I think in New Zealand run by a guy called John Whiffin, who builds his own kits, and there are lots of examples of his kits built by him pictured on his website if you have a look. It's a very interesting website, and lots of buildings too. If you've never been there, then do go there, because you'll probably find buildings you never thought you could buy. The one shame of it is they have a warehouse building, but it's not the same as their original warehouse building. I think they've made it easier to build, but their old one was better, and I do have two downloads of their old warehouse in two different brick styles. and I've got one of them on the layout, and you will have seen it many times because it's in 3 sections. I'm looking at it now. It's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's got 30 round top windows in 3 stories above the ground story, which is quite high. And it was a labour of love to build, and it's just dead flat. There's no real depth to it at all, the way I've built it. You can build it as a proper building, but it's a shame he doesn't do that one anymore. He does one that's not quite as good. And why he took the old one off, I don't know, because it was a perfectly good building. Anyway, that's the strangeness of the way some people seem to do business. But those shipping containers are, as I say, from Scale Scenes. This is the front page of their instructions, and there is one of the shipping containers, and it shows you that it is a complete kit. It's not just flat like I've built them. What I've done is I've built the sides, and then I've had to put the roof on as a very thin strip of the original roof. That wasn't easy, but it's come out okay. And I guess that company somewhere in that building or in front of that building will have some kind of crane that can lift containers up to 3 high like that. But bear in mind, this is not a container port or a container terminal. It's got no rail service, it's only road served. And if you want to know, the bottom one is unnamed, and probably I've decided is actually one of their storage areas. They have gained that container because it's no longer shippable perhaps, and they use it for storage. Maybe the janitor uses it for his lawnmowers and things, amongst others. The next one is PO Shipping, not to be confused with P&O, although it may have some affiliation, but this one is definitely Chinese. You can tell that by the writing down here. And the top one is one that we see a hell of a lot here in East Anglia, going to and from the port at Felixstowe, and that is MSC, which is Mediterranean Shipping Company. Nearly said the wrong thing there. I wanted simple pastel shaded containers, so I avoided the Maersk and Sealand, which are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. I avoided those because they're almost cliche nowadays. You can still see there's a bit more of the terrace of houses showing, but other than that, that's that section complete. If we move round a little further, we come to the next 2 buildings, where we can zoom in again a little further. And again, not very well looked after. There's lots and lots of trees and bushes growing up. This building is another stone cast from 10 Commandments models. Again, it's got the siding, but this one has got a brick base, all built in one piece. There's no putting together, they just come like that. And I just painted it a boring green because there is a building where we used to go for a walk in Huntingdon, where I used to work, and it was a big square building, no features on it at all, and it was boring green, and it was a green like that. And I just thought, well, obviously there are buildings like that around. It didn't even have a pitched roof, this one, it's flat. And it was enormous. I don't even know, I had no sign on the back to say who it was. We used to just walk past it, and every time I did I thought, what an eyesore. The houses opposite had to look at it, so there you go. But once again, nobody cares here, and we've got, I think this is clump foliage and fine leaf foliage, again clump, oh, I've just knocked a bit off, clump foliage and fine leaf foliage, and in order to get them to grow that high, they're stuck to the wall. That's why that piece just fell off. I poked it. But this is actually stuck to the wall, doesn't move. Okay, we've mentioned that that one is another another building from the range by Ten Commandments. But this next building is actually another one from Model Railway Scenery, and it is this one. Now this doesn't look anything like the way I've built it, as you can see. Nothing whatsoever. You look at that one and you look at that one, they are completely different. This one's even got quite a lot of depth to it, whereas mine has got virtually none. It's about 3 millimeters thick at the most. But you can modify these download and print kits very easily, and that's what I've done with that one. This one is called Low Relief Industrial Unit Style 1. Again, they don't have any designating references, but that's completely plain, as is the one next to it. There are no doors in the back or anything. I don't think there are. No, I didn't put any doors in the back. That's completely doorless. And once again, we're talking Woodland Scenics parts here. This is another bit of, I think, I'm going to put my head in the way now. Yeah, that is actually made from a piece of fine leaf foliage that we talked about, whereas these are all made from mixtures of clump foliage and underbrush. And to get the height, they're stuck to the wall. You can stick them on top of one another as well. They're not meant to be that high, but I just find that they work. There's a lot of coarse turf along the bottoms here to make it look rough, and coarse turf at the bottom here. But this plant here and this plant here are something slightly different, which is a technique I came across by accident. Now I'm going to zoom it in quite tight, and I'm going to have to tip you down a bit to see this. Sorry about the camera movement. I'm on a really long zoom and I'm working one-handed. Okay, now what we've got here is these two plants are simply growing on the wall. They're a bit like ivies, but they're not actually plants at all. They're not bought as plants. They're not clump foliage. They're not underbrush. But I came across doing this by accident. I'm sure other people do it. If you just take a brush, I haven't got a brush in my hand. I'm just going to walk across in front of you to get a brush. There we go. Come back. Right, take a brush. I tend to use one a bit like, oh, let me get far enough away. It's not going to focus on that. See if it'll focus on my hand. Yes, it will. Okay. I normally use a brush a bit like this one, which is very soft and very cheap, and put a bit of glue on it and then wipe most of it off, and then just flick it like that, and a bit thicker at the bottom. Just flick it, and then get some fine turf and throw it at it. It'll stick where the glue is. Just a bit of PVA, that's all you need. The fine turf will stick where the PVA is, and it'll give you this effect. And that plant there and that plant there are both done in that way. I've used it to actually make trees on a back scene before now, where I've done several layers, let the first one dry and add another, and bring it out, and use a little bit of coarse turf as well. But you've got to be careful. Coarse turf is very hard to control under that. that circumstance. The fine turf works beautifully for it. But just build up thicknesses of fine turf. You can see this one is actually much thicker than this one. Well, I hope you can from where you're looking. You'll also notice this is where I've got to with the fence. I haven't even cut the bottom pieces off this bit of fence yet. I only installed that piece yesterday. Just behind the fence here you can see a couple of oil stroke chemical drums, and they are another Nightwing product. I'll try and show it to you. Another product from Nightwing. Turn it over. White metal, of course. Yeah, and as you can see there, I hope, they are B3 OOHO line side range oil and chemical drums. I say from Nightwing. They're online, so you can find them easily enough. They do lots of little bits and pieces. I've got quite a few bits in the drawer. A lot of people use the Nightwing fueling point, which is a plastic kit, in their diesel depots. So you must have heard of them. Anyway, that's as far as we got there. I'm going to move the camera once more to the very last bit of the back scene. We're nearly at the end now. I can hear you all sighing with relief. Good, this bloke will stop waffling at us soon. But I'll just stop the camera and move it once again. Right, now we're at the end that isn't quite finished yet, and we're looking at the next building, the building you were just looking at over there. That one is still just about visible to you. The next building is this one, and this is another download and print kit from modelrailwayscenery.com, and it's this one. Okay. And that is low relief North Light factory walls, version 1, brown brick walls with light corrugated roof. Mine doesn't look anything like that. If you look at mine and you look at theirs, the first thing you'll notice, one thing to notice I should say, not the first thing because you may not notice it, but one thing to notice is that the north lights are facing the other way. I've got my north lights here on this end, whereas their picture, sorry, there and their picture has the north lights here with the south there. That way on my layout down there is south. This way is north. So I had to have my north lights the other way round. And this is the beauty of kits like this, because you can flip them. What I had to do was the base pieces that you stick the walls to, stick the wall materials to, I had to simply turn over after I'd cut them out. That was easy. But the walls I had to print backwards, and if you look at that door, it's one window from that wall. Well, if you look here, this is hard work to show you. If you look here, yeah, that's got a big door there, and this door here is two windows from that wall. But remember, I flipped it round, so this end here is actually the opposite end when you're looking here. And I took that big roller shutter door or whatever it is, yeah, that big door there, I took that out and replaced it with a copy of that small door and another window. And it really does show the versatility of these download and print kits. I love them. But but you can drive yourself mad with them as well. Can I actually do what I want to do? And sometimes you'll find you end up printing things twice. Now, it's all very well spinning round the base pieces, but when it comes to the walls are only printed one way round. So what I actually did was I used a PC program which will accept PDF inputs. I cannot remember for the life of me which one I used. I have loads that I play with. I play with things like Photoshop, but I also play with a program called GIMP. I also use a program called Photo Filter, which is the one I use most of the time. And I also use Inkscape, which is not a photographic package at all, but it will read in PDFs. And all I did was I actually mirrored the wall before I printed it out. The wall didn't have any windows in it. It was a plain one, and you pushed them through the holes in the back. But what it did have was these shapes, and I had to get those the other way round. So I simply mirrored it. And then, as I say, I pinched another door by copying that one twice and put it there, and another window. I don't even think I had to print any more windows. I think there was an extra one anyway. Yeah, it's in two halves, and this is supplied as a drain pipe in the kit. I'm not convinced about that being a drain pipe, because if you've got to drain that valley, you've got to drain that one, etc. I decided that drainage was done a different way, possibly inside the building. There's plenty of that happened in the past. And all this is a bit of conduit that provides power into the building, and it says here, danger high voltage, which is a sign that came with one or other of these kits. But there you go. It is not that difficult to modify these kits to do what you want them to do. This kit also from Scale Model Scenery, from modelrailwayscenery.com, is also a thin-walled 3D kit. It's not very deep, but it's much deeper than I've built it. I have simply built it as a very flat model, and I simply printed out more of the fronts and stuck them together that way. You can print them as deep as you like, because it's only cornflake packet cardboard. I say cornflake. Cornflakes are a very good material, but there are other cereals that are available. But it's cereal packet, and all of these are made with cereal packets. So the card cost me nothing. All I had to pay for was the downloadable kits. Now, one thing to look at is that this is not finished because I haven't fitted the fence along here yet. I do have two more pieces of fence sitting down here. There's one of them, all the way around. There's one, and one goes there. Then I need to make another one to go there. And I need to make another one, which you couldn't see what I just showed you, which was stupid. Yeah, one there, out of shot. But you'll see that in a minute. The reason I haven't fitted those yet, this is now meant to represent, this surface has got what's known as Woodland Scenic's blended turf on it. It's just a fine turf which has got very little grass in it. It's mostly gravelly looking material, and the factory has got large doors because these are entrances and exits. They're not just fire doors, and the factory workers can get in and out at both ends, and they can come in this way rather than coming in the main entrance and going to the factory. The place I used to work had a main entrance where everybody was allowed in and out, and you had to go through the reception into the factory, or there was a door at the back, or it was at the side, where you went into the factory where the clocking in machines were. And that is what I'm depicting here. But I haven't put the fence up because I've got another little kit, which here is one of them, which is a bicycle. I'll bring it up to the camera. You probably can't see it at all, so I will attempt. I'm not finished painting it yet, but it is a laser cut bicycle, and that is yet another scale model scenery.co.uk kit. And there it is. It is LX04100, pack of 15 gents and 10 ladies bicycles. They're a bugger to put together. They're very small, but if I can do it, as I always say, if I can do it with my eyesight, then anybody can do it. I do use a magnifier, of course, as you've probably seen in the past, but if I can put them together, anybody can. I have been beaten by one kit, and that was a kit from Knock that was supposed to be daffodils, and I tried and tried. Daffodils? Not daffodils at all. Let me rephrase that. Dandelions. Yeah, Knock dandelions. And I tried and tried to put those kits together, and I failed miserably. I just had to give up in the end. It just wouldn't work for me. They are so tiny that they are almost impossible to see. I need a microscope to work under. Not just a magnifier, but a real microscope. I've got powerful magnifiers, but not ones that fit on my face. So I end up with only one hand because I'm holding the magnifier with the other hand. And that's what I would have needed to put these damn things together. I just could not see what I was doing. I had to give up and admit defeat. It's beyond my eyesight. I'm sure there are plenty of people who have put them together, but I'm not one of them. So I'm looking for a much better daffodil, but I don't think they exist anywhere. Oh, daffodil, I've said it again. Dandelion. I'm looking for better dandelions that are already built, but I haven't found any yet. But anyway, that's one failing of mine. Okay, that's why you haven't seen that. I've got about 4 bicycles that I'm currently painting, and they're in the very early stages, and they are going to lean up. It's just fallen on me. I'm pressed up against the bench here. Okay, I'm going to put them along the wall here. I've got about 4 of them, so I should just space them out. And then I shall put the fence up. There'll be nothing else there, just the bicycles. So, last of all, we'll just move along to the last building. And we'll zoom in. I'll just tip this back down again a bit. And we'll zoom in again. Oops. Okay, that's a little too far. There you go. Okay, now this is the last building in the line, and it is this one from railwayscenery.com, and it is low relief 1930s factory. It's not as low relief in the kit as I've built it. I've actually built it even lower relief than the kit was, again because I don't want them too deep, but that's just by leaving the sides off and wrapping the ends round. It's not difficult to do, but again that's why I like these kits. They're easy to modify. Okay, so this one is old. It's got lots of small bushes growing up along the front here. and that's all it'll have. I'm not going to put anything else there, just those to show that it's an old building. The fence will finish, there's a post here, and the fence will then go off at an angle through there. Because there's going to be a bit of a hump up here, and something that people don't seem to know, a lot of people don't know, where does the railway boundary, where should the railway boundary be in a cutting or on an embankment? On an embankment, the railway boundary is not at the top of the embankment, it's at the bottom, because the railway has to ensure that the embankment is not messed about with by anyone. So they own the whole property that the embankment is on, and their railway fence, their perimeter, is along the bottom of the embankment. If it's a cutting, then they have to maintain the walls of the cutting and make sure that they are not collapsing onto the railway. So the railway boundary is along the top of the cutting. A lot of people get that wrong. I've noticed a lot of people get that wrong, especially if the cutting is only shallow or the embankment is not very high, in particular if the embankment's not very high. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to have a little bit of an embankment, so the fence has got to run behind the trees. Actually, what I was pointing at then you can't see. I'm talking about from here onwards. I can't see the camera while I'm doing this. From this point on that way, going that way, I'm going to have a little bit of an embankment as we go around the curve, which the trees are going to hide from all directions. I've not been very specific about that because I haven't actually done it yet, and until I do it I can't actually tell you what exactly is going to end up like. However, what you can see is this, which is one of those Woodland Scenic's fine leaf foliage pieces that looks quite presentable as a tree. What I've got to do is I've got to just fill in this area a little bit with more bushes, in case I don't get a tree in front here on the baseboard, because this doesn't look very good through here. This is just fine turf thrown at glue, and you can see I've made the tops wispy so they look a bit like the tops of trees, because I intend to have, I'll turn you around, you can see the wispy tops better. Should have done that before we did anything else. You see the end there, there's the window there. And this bit is just that turf again, like we did on that building where we made wispy foliage. You can see the tops, which I haven't done very well because you can't see it in the camera. Very hard to be the director and the presenter. Okay, so the tops along here are wispy so they can be trees if my trees aren't quite tall enough to cover that. And that's the end. You can also heave a sigh of relief now, because I'm tired out, I'm dry from talking, and I have come to the end of the back scene. I'm not at the complete end of the back scene from my point of view. As you can see, I still have a few little bits to do, but I will not be doing another video on the back scene. I have now told you everything that I can about what the back scene is made from, where all the parts came from, etc. So if you've got any questions, ask them in the comments. If you've got any comments, simply put the comments in. Give me a like, or if you must, a dislike. I wouldn't be surprised, I'm no expert at making videos. And subscribe, because there will be a lot more videos coming on this layout. Once I get this back scene finished and in place, then we'll start putting the baseboards in on top of the shelf that this is standing on at the moment, and then we can start putting some track in, and we can start making holes in the foam to mount the points, and we can start using Cambridge turnout actuators, which were kindly 3D printed from his own design by my good friend Hugo, and hopefully in a couple of months, maybe 3 months, we'll at least have a train running round again. That might be a very ambitious target. In fact, it is a very ambitious target, and I'll probably fail miserably to get there, but we'll see. So thanks for watching, and I'll be back very soon with another video. Bye.